This is Kickin' and Streamin' Podcast, a binge watcher's guide to streaming movies, TV series, and stuff. Here are your hosts, Graham and Jocelyn.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Kickin' and Streamin' Podcast. My name is Graham and with me today is the absolutely fantastic Jojo. Hello, Jojo.
Hello, Graham. How are you?
Jojo, we are doing absolutely fine. This has been slightly a better week than last week. Today is actually the day that we record this podcast is September 11th.
Yes.
And so there are commemorations going on all over the country. And wherever you are in the world, you must remember this day, even though it happened only in the United States. But over the years, it has affected pretty much our way of life. And it has changed the way we approach things and the way we even live our own lives, isn't it, Jojo?
Yeah. It's very, very true. The repercussions of the events of that day have affected so many people in this country, but, in other countries as well. A lot of things changed in just a very short amount of time.
Absolutely. It is also apropos that we are reviewing a movie that deals with the aftermath of 9/11. And the movie we are talking about is currently on Netflix and is called Worth. So this is the movie we are going to talk about today. And hopefully, if you have been affected by 9/11 in some way, it's not necessarily a trigger. So, Jojo, let's talk about Worth. This movie stars Michael Keaton, who, by the way, is like what is it that they say about old wine? Is this guy, like, seriously, I never took Michael Keaton more seriously than now that he's an older actor.
Yeah. I think maybe our generation tends to think of him more as Batman and I don't know, Beetlejuice and a few other things. But when we see him in a very serious role at times, it's kind of hard to be like, wait, what?
Yeah.
But when I saw him in Birdman, I was really blown away by his performance in that. And that kind of made me understand and appreciate that, hey, this guy is a good actor. And that's not to say that he wasn't great in his quote unquote less serious roles. It's just interesting to see him playing something so deep and so, I guess, insightful or impactful is the way to put it.
So let's talk about Worth, Jojo. When I was watching this movie, I always thought about the task of describing this movie to people in a way that it will make you want to watch it. So I've said this before. I'm glad that since the inception of this podcast, we've always assumed that the responsibility of making things make sense falls onto you. So once again, let's do it.
No pressure. And, Lord only knows how good a job I've ever done of it before, but I'll try this time too. So Worth is a film about a fund that was set up very quickly after 9/11. And it was a compensation fund for the victims' families. The government decided to do this so that thousands of lawsuits wouldn't essentially crater the economy. So this movie is about that fund and the special master that was appointed over that fund, whose name was Kenneth Feinberg. And Kenneth Feinberg was and is an attorney of some distinction and education. And this movie is about the way the funds are dispersed, but also about I think you could almost call it sea change of realization and character of one man in government. And to me, this movie demonstrates that very well. And also the story of Ken Feinberg is one that is so fascinating because not only do we very rarely in just everyday life find someone who will admit that they're wrong and then change, to find a government official, a special master, someone who's been given more power than anyone in the history of government before over money, to admit that he was wrong in the beginning and change the way he was doing things to to an actual way with feeling and empathy and worth is a story worth telling and a story worth watching. So this movie is a movie about, I think about that, about the fact that people can change and there is a possibility for redemption.
Like I said, no one could have put it in better words than you, and I'm glad that we have you, because we can talk about the depiction of Kenneth Feinberg in the brilliant work of Michael Keaton, but also we have to take into account that Kenneth Feinberg is a living person, and when history is written, it's been only 20 years since, but when history is written, Kenneth Feinberg is going to occupy a place that, as of yet, he is not has been given the credit, and perhaps this movie does justice to his work. This movie deals with a lot of philosophical questions that we would never pin on the 9/11 attacks. But one that comes to mind for me is the worth paradigm. There are two proposals, if you will, of the worth paradigm. And it is, what does a human life worth in legal terms? And what does a human life worth in simple, economical, black market work? And in the worth paradigm, if you compare a 2-carat piece of rare diamond with a human life is worth absolutely nothing in comparison to that. It's really shit. The other paradigm, so in that respect, legally, a human being is worth about $360,000. It sounds shit. It sounds crazy to even talk about it in those terms. But when you talk about the other paradigm, which is the black market, the organ trafficking part of it, a human being based on vital organs that are transferable to another human being, that's about $2.5 million. Again, that is if they are able to take it from you and put it in someone else. And that means everything in you that is usable. But let's not forget that there are pieces of diamonds that are so much more expensive than that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the worth paradigm is basically what establishes that human beings are shit in comparison.
Yeah, if you're talking about solely material things, a human being will never be worth, a diamond, a ruby, so many things. I mean, for our true crime fans out there, that regularly people will kill other people for $1,500, $2,000, pay off your
Right.
car, and I'll kill this person for you. And that's the person's life, or someone will be killed for their life insurance policy, which is $100,000 or whatever. So, I mean, now I know to ask for $360,000 and the next time somebody asks me to off somebody for them. So at least I know, how to price myself.
And so this is what Ken Feinberg was faced with, in the sense that he is a guy who is approaching all of this from the perspective of what does a human life worth.
Yes.
Now, the government's purpose was a completely different one, in that what we don't want is for the economy to completely crash. And we know that this is about to happen because, hey, they're going to come after the airlines, right? But if the economy tanks, then we lose, and the people who are on the other side of the loss also will. So it's easy to tell ourselves, let's do this for the people who have suffered already the tremendous loss, even though in the end, what we're trying to do is to prevent those people to go after the airline industry.
Yes, the government put this fund in for definitely selfish purposes, you can say. But I do think that Kenneth Feinberg, when he became special master, when he went after this job and he wanted this job and nobody else wanted it, I do believe that he wanted it to try to do the right thing, that he felt that he was someone that would be able, he did have a smaller scale experience in these kinds of cases, but I do believe that when he did that, he was genuinely trying to do the right thing. And I don't think that he ever wanted this job for quote unquote glory or recognition. I do think that he was doing it because he wanted to do what he could for his country.
Yeah, I think on the other hand that Kenneth Feinberg was a man of logic.
Yes.
And to a certain extent, he was so pragmatic that he forgot that grief has no logic, that grief is raw emotion, in that it takes a long time to get over grief. And so it's easy to look at the character of Ken Feinberg and think this guy has literally taken a side. But if you analyze the situation a bit more, you will understand that no, he wasn't. He was just being robotic, maybe. Like he was a guy who was trying to see the numbers to the best of his ability. I think that was what Ken Feinberg attempted to accomplish here, is that we will do something where everyone wins, except that he wasn't able to see that none of it would mean that the families who lost loved ones were winning anything, which is why I think he stayed away from, getting into the interviews and things like that.
Yeah.
But like the interviews is what sort of brought to the forefront what was at stake here, because the idea that a lot of people simply didn't want anything but something more than remuneration, isn't it?
Yeah. It seemed as though he felt that he had to keep himself separate from the emotion and the very high emotions that were going on at the time. And the only way to do that was not to take part in the interviews of the survivors and the family members that were left behind. But I think that his staff helped him understand. His staff and also some meetings with people helped him understand that this was different than those cases that he had worked before, that those had been at rest for a while, if you will. And this was something that had just happened a few months ago. And these people are still processing the fact that they're never going to see their loved one again. And you're shoving papers in their face and saying, sign here. And this is how much your husband was worth. And this is how much your wife was worth. And I think that Stanley Tucci put in a beautiful performance, is the character whose name has gone out of my head.
Wolf. Mr. Wolf.
Yes.
Charles Wolf.
Charles Wolf. I shouldn't call him a character. He's a real person. Charles Worth, who was running the website called Fix the Fund. When Stanley Tucci delivered the line, everything about this formula is offensive to me, I felt all of that. He did it so perfectly. He delivered the line so perfectly. It could have been dramatic and over the top, and he could have been screaming it and everything, but it was just the bare facts of my wife died in the North Tower, and everything about this formula is offensive to me. I thought was a beautiful way of showing those of us on the outside how these folks felt and how we would feel if someone handed us a formula and said, this is how much your son was worth. This is how much your daughter was worth. And so the fact that Charles was able to go from being such a harsh and worth it. I mean, it should have been. He was very critical of Kenneth Feinberg and the job he was doing managing the fund. And I think it speaks volumes that he was able to change his mind about that and say actually at the end that he trusted Ken Feinberg. Shows truly that this man did change and he did understand. And I think that's just, he's a very fascinating individual in the fact that he was able to do that. From the few 60-minute segments I've seen, and there's a documentary that as well about him, that he went from essentially the most hated man in America among this group, the special compensation group, to one of the most beloved. That just doesn't happen, especially not from the people who have lost everything. Essentially, they've lost everything. He didn't magically make everything better for these people. He was just able to make things as fair as they could be. Nobody was happy at the end of this, right? Nobody was thrilled and jumping up and down from joy that, oh, hooray, my loved one's dead and I've got $10 million or whatever. It was in the sense of, I understand that you've done what you were able to do and that you made this as right as you possibly could make it within the parameters of your allowance.
Yeah, Georgia, you've basically touched on the two most important characters here. And it is because of the character of Charles Wolf, or because of Charles, one of the hardest things to deal with as the point of view of a patient advocate or somebody who is on the other side of the counter is when people take it all out of you and completely forget that you are trying to help. And it becomes the whole biting the hand that is helping you. And from my point of view, I have to understand that, but it is hard to accept. Motherfucker, I am trying to help you.
Right.
Do you know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Right.
stop shooting the messenger because I am trying to help you.
Yeah.
Tell me how I can make it better, but stop trying to bite my hand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the first intervention of Charles Wolfe is exactly that. Like, look, man, let's stop going after this guy. We have to remember that he is here doing a job and he's the messenger.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And even when Feinberg told him, like, thanks for the help, he's like, yeah, I am a fan of civility.
Yeah.
You know, like, don't get me wrong. I still think you're doing a shit job, but you have been placed in a situation that you're not at fault, you know. And I love that. I absolutely love that. And I think the interaction with him, the fact that he came into the picture made a difference in the way that Feinberg approached this entire situation. There are other mitigating facts here, right? You have the firefighter's wife and the family. What was their name?
I don't remember.
Donato.
Yes.
Right. I think that created a big turning point for Ken Feinberg. But here's the thing. What I find important here in this situation is also the way we approach heroism. Because once somebody is dead, the way we see them is we almost want to canonize them, because whatever heroic thing they did, that placed them in a pedestal as if they never were human beings before.
Right.
And I think that was the case here with Nick Donato, is that both the wife and the brother knew that he was imperfect. He was a fucking human being. Of course he was imperfect, but he died a hero. So if you won't speak ill of the dead, you won't speak ill of the hero. And I think one of the things that this movie shows is that all of it is bullshit, because being a hero has nothing to do with being perfect. Being a hero has nothing to do with the shortcomings of real life. That the notion that at the moment of your death, you did something or you died doing something that was worth everything you ever lived for does not take away from the fact that you were an imperfect human being.
Right.
Simple as that.
Right.
And this, I think, to me, that is a lesson in this movie that is very subtle, but everybody should take a look at.
It's true. It's true. And becoming a hero doesn't make you magically not an asshole.
Yeah.
So, there are people who have done terrible things, maybe in their private or personal life, or questionable things. But if their overarching purpose was to create good things to happen, then what human beings are complicated is basically what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Is that we're very, very complicated things, and we do have the tendency after somebody dies to only remember the good things about them, or only want to remember the good things about them, and we do have the tendency to not want to speak ill of the dead, which I actually never understood personally. I think some of it may come from superstition or whatever, but I'm like, if somebody dies and they were an asshole to me before they died, and all I ever saw was assholery, then I'm not going to be like,
that's it.
I'm like,
Fuck off.
you're still an asshole. I mean, I'm sorry for your family that you're dead, and I'm sure that people loved you, but at the same time, I'm not going to be like, oh, what a wonderful person.
Nah. That motherfucker was an asshole.
Yeah, right, exactly. So I personally don't understand that, but for those who do feel that way, I think that we all should maybe try to pull that out and examine it and see what we have that based in.
Now, let's go ahead and talk a bit about the cast, because everything about this cast is beautiful. It was probably one of the most carefully cast movies I've ever seen. Everybody sort of like had an incredible respect for the roles that they played, and I'm grateful for that. What do you think, Joe?
I I agree with you. I think everyone was very respectful and very understanding of the importance of what they were doing, what they were talking about. I do have, I don't know what to call it, a question, maybe a quibble, but Kenneth Feinberg is Jewish, and Michael Keaton is very Catholic.
Right.
Irish background, Scottish background, and as great a performance as Michael Keaton does put in this movie, I just kind of have a question as to why someone Jewish wasn't cast for the role.
I think the simple answer to that is the fact that Michael Keaton was one of the producers.
It's true, he was.
I mean, his money was in there, so he wanted probably to play the role. And again, as you said, he did a fantastic job.
Yeah,
He did
he
a
did.
very dignified representation and portrayal of Ken Feinberg.
He did.
But that is a legitimate question to ask, isn't it? I mean, why wouldn't you cast someone who is Jewish? And I think the same goes for Charles Wolfe. I'm not entirely sure about in terms of background and religion, but Stanley Tucci did an absolutely fantastic job. But again, these are legitimate questions to ask. So yeah, we have Michael Keaton playing Ken Feinberg, Stanley Tucci playing Charles Wolfe, and Amy Ryan plays Camille Biros. To a certain extent, it feels like Camille Biros was sort of like the screaming conscience behind Ken Feinberg, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, and I think Amy Ryan put in a beautiful performance as this lady. I keep wanting to say character, but this was a real person. I think that she brought a lot of humanity and understanding to the part, and it's a very understated performance. And I did read some people who were sort of complaining about, oh, people were so stiff and awkward, but I never felt in the sense of poor acting. I thought everyone did a lovely job in acting. I thought that it was a very grand portrayal of how we all feel when somebody that we don't know at all is sitting across from us bawling. And we also, at the same time, have to be sort of a neutral party in the sense of that they were attorneys, and they can't be 100% sympathetic to this person. They
No.
can't reach across the desk and give them a big hug or that kind of thing, because they have to be sort of a disinterested party. But at the same time, of course, we're human beings. And so I think that the entire cast did a wonderful job of portraying the fact that my heart is breaking for you, but there's literally nothing I can do for you other than sit here and listen.
Yeah. Somebody who really got my attention is Shunori Ramanathan as
Yes.
Priya Kundi. I am not entirely familiar with this actress. She's been in a lot of things. She was on The Big Sick. She was on the movie Monuments, Jonathan, and of course Worth. But yeah, I'm not madly familiar with her. But I think this was a very, very nice portrayal of a character who had experience a priori into what happened there and could have a bit more empathy towards the victims, and found herself in a very awkward position, even.
Yeah. No.
Excellent job.
Yeah, she was brilliant.
And of course, Laura Benanti as Karen Donato. And Tate Donovan is one of, like, I cannot count on my fingers how many times I've seen Tate Donovan playing the douchey lawyer. Holy shit, he's good at that.
He really is. He really, really is.
He's good at that.
Very, very good at it.
But he was fantastic. And of course, everybody else in the portrayal of the victims' families were absolutely great.
Yeah.
So, fantastic little movie. It's still a sad movie because it deals with the worth of human life in an incredibly pragmatic way that might be a bit hard to swallow, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I think the way the story was told, what we have learned from the 360 change of heart, if you will, from Ken Feinberg, also makes it a story about redemption, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, stars?
I think 3 3/4 for this one.
You've been very generous lately. I ain't even going to talk you out of this one.
I'm getting to be a softie in my old age.
I know, Jojo. How dare you? Very well then. So 3.75 of a star for Jojo, and I second that. This might be the moment to tell you that we are on social media. You can search for us, and you will find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, and some other places. Whatever. Like I don't know if there was.
We're everywhere.
Yeah, mentioning on Twitter, you will find me as Mr. Pucheta. That's MrPuzzeta, and the same for Instagram. The other thing to tell you is that you can visit our website, kickingandstreamingpodcast.com, to leave a review. Well, you can also leave a review wherever you listen to this podcast. We will take it. Right, Jojo?
That's right.
But for now, for me and for the Jojo, we are going to call it a day. Hello.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Kickin' and Streamin' Podcast. If you found value in our content, please subscribe and share. We would also be delighted to hear what you think of this podcast. So please rate us by writing a quick review on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on all major social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest. Join the conversation happening today on our Facebook group.